I'll go ahead and get us started. I do want to thank everybody for coming tonight. My name is Casey Beckley. I am, let's see, I'm a youth pastor. I am a running coach, a swimming coach, and a father of 3. And you're going to meet the other panelists tonight as well. You're going to meet Ryan, who is also a father of 3, financial advisor, and also a Shackley business guy. We actually, all 4 of us know each other through our mutual connection with Shackley. You're also going to meet Andrew Kurz, who is an occupational therapist, avid runner, as well as Chris Bartholomew, whose day job is actually schmoozing with and getting to know a lot of the Olympic athletes that Shackley works with. And you'll hear part of his story of being an ultra runner. And so what you'll kind of hear tonight also along the way is us just sharing a little bit of our own drive, our own motivation, why we have chosen to try to live a healthier life. And then you're also going to, hopefully you'll walk away with a few tips of maybe next steps, because sometimes the jungle of figuring out making healthier choices can feel like a jungle with lots of vines and distractions along the way. So I hope that as you leave tonight, you'll feel a little challenged to think about, why do I want to try to live healthier? And then also walking away with your own personal next step. And I also want to greet all the guys too that are perhaps listening because someone drugged them along. And so I'm not looking at anybody in particular, but I do want to thank you for showing up. I want to thank you for making the choice to be a good spouse, boyfriend, husband, dad, whatever role you're taking tonight, to just be present. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for listening. And hopefully by the end of tonight, you'll be here for your own reasons as well. But if I can maybe start with my own reasons of why I've tried to live a healthier life. And I just want to give you fair warning. We're going to kind of jump into deep waters right away. I've heard all the different whys and what makes us tick from the different guys. And these are not shallow stories. These are real reasons, because a shallow story doesn't get you up to go, to a gym or to go run or to eat something you should eat versus what you want to eat. So just fair warning. But my story really begins with, I think I was about 16 years old. I had a life changing event, and I haven't really shared this a lot with people in the past. But I had gone to a funeral of it was a guy who was in his early 40s, and he dropped suddenly of a heart attack. From what everyone understood, it seemed like it was kind of a surprise. But he was a very obese man, but he was also a guy, he was very kind to me, and he was also loved dearly by scout troops and by his 3 kids that he left behind. And his kids were all very young. I still remember his boy was about 14 years old, and his youngest daughter was 6 at the time. And it was one of the first funerals I'd ever been to. So maybe that's part of the reason why it left kind of an imprint on me, going to that and seeing what happened. I think at that moment, we all make these choices, or we make these promises to ourselves, like, I'll never do that, or I'll always do this. And I think I made one of those decisions, like, I don't want to leave my family like that. I didn't have a family yet, but I just thought, I don't want to leave my family like this. But then fast forward about another 20 years, I was about 35 years old, and began to look at the scale, and I had to look over my belly to see the scale and realize that I'm about 40 pounds heavier than I was at my college swimming weight. And I was like, I am no longer a college athlete. I'm no longer an athlete anymore. And I'm breaking this promise I'd made to myself that I did not want to end up here. And so from that day, I started to try to make healthier choices, to just move more towards a healthier lifestyle. So I think that's a little bit of what, or maybe why I've tried to live healthier along the way. But yeah, I hope that, like I said, I just want to warn you, we did jump into some deep waters, but that's where we're landing right now.
So Casey, it can be overwhelming sometimes, like, to realize you're in a place where you need to make changes. Like, how did you decide what changes you were going to make and implement those in your life? Like, how did you take the first steps?
No, I think that's a good question. I mean, looking back over my life, I realized I've always been an endurance athlete. I've always swam, biked, ran, like that's just always been my thing. And so I naturally just gravitated towards those things, and I like them. Yeah, so sometimes people ask me, like, what should I do? I'm like, well, find a sport you like, because doing running just because it's going to help you lose weight, like, that is not fun. And it doesn't last for the long term either. It's not something you can consistently do over a long period of time. So I just kind of began to make those micro choices, and began to run a little bit more and a little bit more and eat a little bit better and a little bit better. And when I was growing up, we'd always taken supplements and vitamins and things like that. So I started to look back at, like, I think I need some vitamins. I keep getting sick, or I need to, start kind of monitoring more of what I was putting into my body as well. Realizing I can't just, run to the fridge now that I'm, running is more, on the road. So I think that was kind of where I was at. But I don't know, Chris, I've heard a bit of your story. Would you mind you sharing with us kind of what, why did you wake up one day and decide, I think I'm going to start running, 50-mile, 100-mile races?
Well, thinking about like why I even started to run, I think back, again, like my childhood, when I was 4 or 5 years old, my parents moved back to the hometown where they grew up and met. And I was surrounded by family. Like both of my grandparents were just up the street. I had aunts and uncles on both sides of my house that I grew up in. And like I watched them all have heart problems and strokes. And it just broke my heart because these people were really my best friends. And I would end up at the hospital, at their bedside, seeing all how their health choices and kind of sedentary lifestyles had diminished what they were able to experience in life. And so I think at that point, I decided that I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I was going to make health choices that would help me live a fuller life at that point. I was lucky. My dad sort of picked up on this too and started running about 3 miles a day, and he would let me ride my bike along with him. So that definitely inspired me to have family like that. And then as I went to college, I kind of fell into some anxiety and depression, and I found out quickly that if I had consistent exercise, and I'm talking like maybe 3 miles, like I had this favorite trail I would go on every day, and it would like clear my head. I would feel empowered to make decisions, and all the obstacles, at least that had seemed to come up, would fall away. And so I really found that was a powerful tool, along with healthy eating choices for me. But I would say like the thing that really got me into running and pushed me into distance running was I moved to California, which I was so happy to do. But when I got here, I fell into a trap that so many people do when they move to California and other things in life. Is like I really faced a lot of debt, and I found myself like diving back into feelings of depression and powerlessness, and I found like that I needed to do something to change that. And my first step was to turn back to running. And so that really got me running again.
That's awesome. Chris and Ryan here. I think one of the things that I hear in your story and having gotten to know you over the years, knowing that there's that part that kind of pushed you into this passion for health that you have and for running. What are the things that continue to kind of pull you forward? Like I guess the question I would have is, how can we find people who inspire us? Who are the people who have inspired you to go from running 3 miles a handful of times a week to 50 milers and beyond, right? Or
yes.
Yeah, you've maxed out beyond 150, right?
Yeah, I have. Well, I'm really lucky to work at the corporate office of Shackley, and I think everyone here, both the corporate offices and then everyone who's sort of involved in this community, like they all have a health journey. And so I, like every day when I go to work, I hear someone else's inspiring story. And Mark Ramirez, who's a legend, a marathoner here at the office, sort of became my friend when I first started. And he would, just tell me inspiring stories all the time. And one time I was complaining to him about how I had run, the day before like 10 miles. And so I needed a few days off. And he said, well, what about active recovery? You should go running right now. So that really inspired me. And then another story so, Mark inspired me. I decided that I would go for half marathon. That's the most I ever wanted to run because I could push it all the way through 13 miles and sort of be competitive. And one race at Stinson Beach, just north of San Francisco, I got lost. It was raining. All the signs that the company had put out sort of like blew away. And I ended up running almost 20 miles, and I was so mad. Every mile, every step, I just cursed cursed the situation, cursed the running company. And then after I finished and kind of cooled down, I thought, wow, maybe I have something else in me. Maybe I've got more in me. And it was a really great moment.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah. So, like, Ryan, I know that long distance running isn't necessarily your thing, but like you're really into CrossFit and weights, and I really struggle to incorporate more of that in, and I look up to you for that. What got you going? What's your motivation?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is that as we talk between different types of athleticism or activity, like I look at you guys and I'm like, man, a half a marathon. I wonder if I could do that someday. And so I got to say, being amongst 3 other runners who are sharing tonight, you guys really inspire me. And maybe one of these days you guys can help me do that. But yeah, my focus has been, I incorporate cardio, but do a lot more with weightlifting. Some of it, longer sessions, some of it quicker interval-based sessions. But really, I think why health has become important to me. And I think it's interesting because we've all talked so far about things that have happened in our youth, things that we thought of or that we saw in our youth that kind of we link back to and say that happened. And so it's kind of been a progression since then to prioritize health. And for me, I was an athlete in high school, but I wasn't healthy. Okay. Like, I think a lot of times we can trick ourselves into thinking like, oh, I'm athletic at those younger ages, high school, college level. But for me, I realized that once I was no longer in athletics and I was in my early 20s, I had like zero core of health and understanding of how to be healthy outside of being good at a sport. Like, and so, I was newly married in my early 20s, was beginning a business. We were super busy volunteering with youth within our church. And I just never really made time for it. But early on, I remember in our marriage, I just remember thinking, man, I'm not showing up as the person that I always thought I would as a 20, 21, 22-year-old when I thought about that being that age at, junior high school age. I'm not that person. And that's got to change. Like my father had a stress-related heart attack at the age of 34. I survived that, but that was a very alarming thing to happen at his age. Family, health issues, things like that I was aware of. I knew that if I didn't take stock of where I was at, kind of at this crossroads, if I can either keep going that direction or I can make a change, that if I didn't change something, then that things might not ever necessarily change. So the challenge that I had in front of me, though, again, like I said, was this total lack of understanding, really what it meant to be healthy. Like, what does good nutrition look like, all that. So I did what a lot of people have done for the last decade or so. I went online, right? I tried to research and figure it all out. I ended up joining a health and fitness forum, and there was a lot of good that came from that, but there's also a lot of stuff that I took that was working for other people, but I wasn't really considering, okay, is this for me? And so over the course of several years, I really actually made a lot of mistakes. For me, for my body type, for my goals, I was eating way too little, way too far into a caloric deficit. I was doing a ton of cardio, steady state cardio for very extended periods of time, and not fueling my body to recover from that. And so cortisol levels and hormones were all jacked up. So, really that imperfect plan was something I wasn't even aware wasn't working until I, several years into this process, really looked and said, man, yeah, I'm a little bit healthier, but I'm not that much further down the road than where I was when I started. And just realized, okay, I need to take a step back, start the education process, find people and resources that I trust to be able to educate me and give me that foundation that I need. And so, started learning a lot more about nutrition and how it fuels the body, supplementation, understood and began experimenting for me how weightlifting created an impact in the goals that I was reaching for. And so, over that period of time, my body composition changed. It was really cool though, like to see other things that changed, just kind of sideline things like my allergies, symptoms that I'd had with allergies in the spring and the fall for years and years since I was 6-7 years old, went away. Like just dealing with some of the nutritional and the internal health issues that I was looking at. And so in the process of that, it really just became part of our life. And it's a huge part of our life now. It's a huge part of the communities that we're in. It's a huge part of the business that we have, my wife and I. And it just is, it's a value that really reconnects everything for us. But what I would say is this, is that I have found that health is important to me, because if I don't prioritize it, if I don't create disciplines around my personal health, a lot of other things begin to falter in my life. But when I do focus on creating some disciplines and being disciplined with my health, with my fitness, things like that, it's the one thing that I found really has a cascading or kind of a ripple effect into every other area of my life for me to show up well in my faith, as a husband, as a dad, with clarity in business, and really to be able to contribute at the level I want to contribute to the communities that we're involved in. So that's really the core of what it is for me, and what it's become for me and my understanding of why it should be important.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, Ryan. I'm pretty inspired by you to try to get to the gym more, because for me, I struggle just making it to the gym one day a week. But I wanted to ask, how do you keep lifting weights and your health a priority with everything else that you do in your life? Because I know you're a pretty busy guy.
Yeah, so we've got 3 kiddos, 9 all the way down to 4.5. So that does keep us busy in addition to work and 2 different businesses. And so the way that we've done it, actually, some of it's right behind me. So we, about 3 years ago, realized that getting to the gym was not always possible with nap times and kids with different nap times and things like that. And it just wasn't happening. And so we decided, you know what, let's take some space in our home, and let's go ahead and create a place where that barrier to getting that done is removed. And so we built this out about 3 years ago, but even before that, we did have space in our home. And I think that's one of the things that I would want to communicate to anybody. Like, you don't have to have a full gym at your home. There's so many things that we can do with, couple kettlebells and jump rope and some super simple equipment in a basement or garage or on a driveway, that if you do that for a period of time, a few times a week, that can help get you towards your goals. The other thing that for us too, my wife and I, in our case, we are pursuing fitness and health goals together. And so about 3 times a week, part of our time to connect and be together is actually working out together and training together. So that's another way we've kind of tried to leverage time and kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. So yeah, that's a little bit about us. But Andrew, how about you, as another fellow runner amongst the runners here? What's your story? A little bit about it, and I really like that the part of your story that talks about too, like how it's had such an impact in other areas besides just hitting running goals.
Yeah, running has been huge for me, and I haven't always been a runner. I was pretty active as a kid, like I enjoyed playing baseball and soccer growing up, but running was more of a form of punishment for me. And I guess I'll keep the theme consistent here with diving deep. But back in high school, my older brother and I were in a car accident, and he suffered a traumatic brain injury, and I was lucky to survive with my good health. But I didn't really realize too that I struggled with a lot of depression and survivor's guilt and PTSD from that. And I ultimately found running in college. I had a couple of friends that got me into it, and I just found running was a great way to just help process things and just to connect with other people. I found that a lot of the other fellow runners that I meet, they've gone through similar experiences, and they found running as a way to just help them to move forward in life. And so that's what initially got me into running, but I had the mentality that I could just pick up and like train for a couple months and run a marathon. And I found out that doesn't really work too well. I had a couple of injuries trying to do it that way and trying to do it my way. And I guess fast forward a little bit, one of my college friends that I got into running with, he had cancer, and unfortunately ended up passing away, and that really hit me hard. And I think it was around then, a couple months after that, that I really realized, like, I'm blessed to be here, and I should take better care of myself. We don't know how much time we have on the earth, and so I want to use it wisely and use it well. And just so that's whenever I really started to realize I needed to change things. And something that really helped for me was hearing somebody else's story. Not a guy that's on this call tonight, but he's a triathlete. And I saw a video of him sharing his story and how he did the weight management program through Shackley and just how that helped him win his age group. And I thought that was so cool. I want to do something like that. And so I ended up trying the weight management program myself when I got off of all antidepressant medications that I'd been on. And I haven't looked back. I haven't been on any of them since. And I've done some of the same stuff that I did during that program. And so it really helped me just to be more consistent in my life with the choices that I make of what I'm putting in my body. And yeah, I still love to run. And so that's just kind of carried forward and grown into what it is today.
So Andrew, I appreciate the part you're just talking about how, struggling with kind of, you said depression, I think you said PTSD, and just how running and kind of making that decision to be more active really helped. I hear so many runners share the same thing. They find that aerobic activity to be super helpful. Well, you're not a doctor, but you are someone who's kind of wrestled with this. What have you found to be, really helpful in your day-to-day? Like, how consistent do you feel like you have to run to be able to experience those kind of results? Or what have you found for yourself or from talking to other people?
Yeah, I've found for myself personally, like, you don't have to run every single day to get the benefits. There's certain days where I found like if I do speed work, then I seem to have more of a mood lift from that because I'm pushing myself really hard. But just learning to do more recovery too has been super helpful for me. Just learning to do yoga and meditate and actually sleep 8 hours a night, which I still struggle with. But just stuff like that, it's just kind of bled into all these other different areas that I've learned to make healthier choices, and that's really helped with my overall mental health too.
I know that as we've been kicking around maybe doing a part 2 of this, one of the things we've talked about is men and mental health, and how that is just such a huge topic in and of itself, and how that would be, I'm sure that would benefit so many people. But if you have ideas, folks that are listening in tonight, we'd love to hear other ideas of things you have in mind. Ryan, would you mind just kind of closing us out and letting us know kind of, maybe summarizing a little bit of what you've been hearing and, maybe some of those next steps. And then I just encourage the guys too that are listening kind of think, why do I need to do this? Why should I be thinking about this? And did I hear something that it may not be the same thing that we did, but it may be, what is your thing? So yeah, Ryan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind as we just wrap things up tonight, there's a book called Extreme Ownership by a guy named Jocko Willink, former Navy SEAL. Anyway, but his whole mantra is kind of this mantra of discipline equals freedom. Mm-hmm. And I think that what I've heard kind of as a thread through all the stories that we've shared and so many of the other stories that we've been inspired by for our own journeys is that, like, it's a hard thing to make a choice to create changes, to go from something that's sedentary or fixed to a growth perspective and a growth direction. But when you start creating these disciplines to do that, I think in all of our stories, we've heard stories of, being able to, manage mental health better, to achieve goals better, to show up more for our families in the areas that were needed most because of creating some discipline around our health and our fitness. And so that would be the one thing. But I think that on the flip side of that, the warning is certainly that we don't, from where we are now, wherever somebody's at in their health or fitness journey, what's the one thing that you can do? What's the one thing that you can be disciplined at to go ahead and move into what you want to accomplish next? What is that habit that you can begin stacking other habits on, a week from now, 2 weeks from now, once that habit is established, so that you set yourself up for long-term success instead of what typically, and I'll say for most of us men, not all, but for most of us men, we tend to do is, burn the ships and, burn the bridges and say, it's all over. I'm going to work out 7-8 times a week. I'm going to go from eating unhealthy to salads and chicken breasts on a grill every night. It's something sustainable. So what is that one thing? What's the one thing tomorrow, this week, before Monday morning that you can change, that you can begin stacking? So that would be one thing. The other encouragement that I would say too is find community. In all of the stories that we've shared, I think tonight, and again, that I've heard, there's always an element of community, whether it's one person or 2 people or a large group of people who inspire you, encourage you, create some accountability, and share some resources maybe that can educate you on how to do things better and do things well. I certainly wish I had that earlier in my journey. I would have cut my learning curve significantly by 4 or 5 years, potentially, if I had somebody who was walking along with me. So what does that mean for each of us to find community within whatever fitness endeavor, we want to undertake? So those would be the 2 big encouragements, just the discipline equals freedom. If we find freedom when we find discipline. And so what is that one thing that we can create discipline? What kind of community can we find? And then, really ultimately, as some of you guys have mentioned, the reason that the four of us know each other is because of our partnership with a company called Shackley. And this is not the intro to the big sell, guys. So just keep listening. But the founder of our company, Dr. Shackley, said, your life will be exactly what you decide to make it. Okay. And I love that quote because it does link back to the fact that we have to make a decision and commit to it if we want to see change. And so where in your life, where I need to ask myself, where in my life do I need to do that to continue to grow? Because that's really what it's all about. How do we grow? How do we grow so we show up the way we need to show up as we grow in our responsibilities at a job, as we grow in our responsibilities as a husband, as a dad, as a friend. We need to grow if we want to continue to show up in a way that is a place of contribution. So that would be it. Other than that, certainly would encourage you to get back with the person who invited you to join us tonight. Thank you so much for jumping on. We've been looking forward to doing this over the last week since we started talking about it. And we really hope that you got something out of it. And we'd love to hear what you got out of it, if there's a way for you to connect back with us or the person who invited you. So with that, I'll wrap it up unless anybody else has something else to add.
No, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.